Hello viewers, this is Wagada Ronald taking you through test tutorial for O-level mathematics, and this video I'm going to go through the solutions for Math Part 2 of UNEB 2017. So this video is suitable for students in Senior 4. So just start with question 1. Question 1 says that an increase of 15% in salaries makes the monthly expenditure of salaries of a factory to be shillings 22,425,000. Find the expenditure before the increase. So that means that this one was after the increase. Therefore, the first thing to do is to say that let the expenditure before increase be X. Or that you have to get the new percentage. Remember that it increased by 15%, so the new percentage will be 100 plus 15 to give you 115%. What does that mean? It means that 115% of X, which is the original expenditure before increase, will be equal to 22,425,000. So like I've already said, this word of means multiplication, and this one means 115 over 100. So the percentage means over 100. Therefore, you shall come and say that 115 over 100 is equal, multiplied by X, will be equal to this new expenditure. So now that we have only one unknown, the next thing to do is to make X the subject. So this over this will give you 1.15, then that X is there, equal to that. So from there, the next thing to do is to divide both sides by 1.15 so that we make X the subject. So when you divide, so this divided by this will give us X equal to shillings 19,500,000. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for getting the new percentage, M1 for forming the equation, M1 for division, and A1 for output. Now this question was on business mathematics, and it required candidates to apply the knowledge of percentage increase to calculate expenditure of a factory before salary increment. The question was very popular but not very well done, so students couldn't realize that it has to be 115% of X. What they did, they just made 115% of the expenditure, which was 22.425 million. So the candidates' weakness is that they had a problem in question interpretation, like I've said. Then calculation of percentage decrease, so the inside calculated percentage decrease. Handling of big figures was a challenge to many candidates, so this in millions was a challenge. I advise that teachers should continuously encourage students to put in practice topics covered in lower secondary classes. Remember, this part of business mathematics is covered in Senior 2. So now that was question 1. Now we shall go to question 2. So question 2 says that the sets M and P are such that number of members in M are 50, number of members in P are 25, and number of members in A union P are 60. Calculate the number of members in P intersection M. So the best way to answer this question is to use a Venn diagram. So the first thing to do is we shall say that let the number of members in P intersection M be X. Therefore we shall come and draw our Venn diagram, and after that we shall represent the given information in the Venn diagram. So first of all, the total is, we shall say the total is 60, which is A union P. That means that here outside it will be 0. Therefore, number of members in M are 50, number of members in P are 25. Therefore, A intersection B is what we want, so it will be X, because we already say that here there's X. If this is X, it means that, and the total of this is 50, it means that the remaining part will be 50 minus x, and here the remaining part will be 25 minus x. So next is to substitute. We know that n number of members in M union P is 60, therefore this plus this must add up to 60. So shall come and say this which is there, this which is here, and this which is there is equal to 60. After that, we shall collect like terms. You will realize that this x and this x cancels, then this and this gives you this 75 here, then this minus x is what is here, this 60 is what is there. So after that, we shall make x the subject. So when I make x the subject, for example, if I take x this side and put this one this side, I'll come up with 75 minus 60, which is 15, and that is 15. Therefore x is equal to 15. Now that I've got x, it implies that I've got the number of members in P union M, and that will be 15. So I'll come and conclude that number of members in P intersection M will be equal to 15. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So B1 for feeding in this, this, and this. Then another B1 for feeding in this, this, and this. Then M1 for forming the equation, A1 for the value of x. So the question was on sets, and it required the candidates to use knowledge of set notation or Venn diagram to find the intersection of two sets. So the easiest one is the one for Venn diagrams. So the question was very popular and easily done by most of the candidates. However, some candidates failed to translate the given information into Venn diagram correctly. Failing to get NM only and NP only was also a challenge. So advice to teachers that teachers should teach solution of sets by set notation, and also give students more practice to retain the learned concepts. That was question 2. Now we shall go to question 3. So question 3 says, find the equation of the line joining the points 3, 5 and -2, 10. So the points are those ones. The first thing to do is to get the gradient of the line. So the gradient is change in y over change in x. So change in y will be 10 minus 5, which is there. Then the change in x will be -2 minus 3, which is here. After that, 10 minus 5 is 5, -2 minus 3 is -5. So when I divide 5 by -5, I'll come up with -1 as my gradient. So now that I've got gradient, and I can choose, I'll use the gradient and any one of the 2 points. So let me choose this one, and I'll use the general equation of a line. General equation of a line is y equal to mx plus c, where m is the gradient and c is the y-intercept. So because I don't know the y-intercept yet, I'll first substitute for y-coordinate and x-coordinate. So this y-coordinate I'll put it here, and this x-coordinate I'll put it here, and this m I'll put it here. And when I do that, I'll remain with only one unknown, and that will be c. So when I make c the subject, I'll come up with c equal to 8. What does that mean? It means that now the required equation of the line will be y equal to -1 x plus 8. So what I've done, I've replaced this c with 8 because it's what I got here, and I've also replaced this m with -1, which I got there, to come up with this equation which they want. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for this substitution, A1 for output, M1 for you to get the value of C, and A1 for you to set the required equation. So the question was on graphs and coordinates. candidates were required to form the equation of a straight line through 2 points. The question was popular and well done. However, some candidates had problems in finding the gradient of a line through 2 points. So gradient, you must remember that it has to be change in y over change in x, and you must be consistent. Consistent, I mean y. If you say y2 minus y1, even denominator must be x2 minus x1. For example, some students can begin with y2 minus y1, and denominator they begin with x2 minus x1. So because you have interchange, that will be wrong. So you have to be consistent, and numerator has to be changing y, and denominator has to be changing x. Also, some students fail to use integers correctly. So you must use the integers correctly, especially the negatives. So advice is that teachers should teach various methods of finding the equation of a straight line through 2 points. Practical use of integers will lead to better retention of the candidates by the candidates. So that was question 3. Now we shall go to question 4. Question 4 says that a metallic cylindrical pipe of uniform cross-section area has an outer radius of 14 centimeters and an inner radius of 6.5 centimeters. It has a length of 4.2 meters. So note this word, radius was in centimeters. Radius is in centimeters, but the length is in meters, so you must be very keen. Calculate the volume in centimeters cubed of the metal used to make the pipe. So that means that this meters has to be converted to centimeters for you to be able to get the volume in centimeters cubed. So let me first draw the sketch. So this will be the sketch whereby the outer radius is 14 centimeters, inner radius is 6.5 centimeters, and this height, the length will now be the height, and it is 420 centimeters. So with that sketch, you come and write that the volume of the metal used will be equal to, remember, volume of the cylinder is pi r squared h. So since there are two radii, we shall say one radius is capital R, so pi r capital R squared h, because they all have the same height. Then minus the smaller one, because they want the volume of the metal used from here up to here. So we have to say the whole of this minus the whole from here up to here. That's why we put here minus pi r squared h. So this volume is the volume of the entire outer cylinder, and this volume is the volume of the inner cylinder. Now when I substitute, I'll come and say that pi, now since they didn't give pi, there are two ways of using pi. You can use pi as a fraction, and that will be 20/7, or you can use pi as a decimal, and that will be 3.14. so any will be correct. So for me, I've chosen to use pi as 20/7, which is that. Then radius of capital R was 14, so I'll come and put 14 square there. Then the height was 420, so I'll put 420 there. For this one, pi is still the same. Now r, small r is this, so that's what I'll put here. And the height is still the same, so that's what I'll put there. Now next is to use the calculator to come up with this. So this bracket gives me this volume, which is 258,720, and the whole of this bracket gives me this volume, which is 55,770. But remember, at the end I have to subtract. So when I say this minus this, I'll come up with a volume of 205,950 centimeters cubed. So remember, it has to be in centimeters cubed. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So 1M for this volume of the outer cylinder, another one for volume of the inner cylinder, another one for subtracting the two volumes, then lastly a one for the output. So this question was on mensuration in three-dimensional geometry. It required the candidates to find the volume of the material used to make a hollow cylinder. The question was unpopular, meaning that it rarely appears in the previous years, and many candidates did not do it correctly since they were not used to such questions. So the weakness is that some candidates fail to convert 4.2 meters to centimeters. So always remember that before you substitute into the formula for volume, all the units must be in the same. All the entries must be in the same units. For example, radius must be in the same units as height. Then most candidates did not know the correct formula to use, so you must be able to master those formulae: volume of a cylinder, volume of a cone, volume of cuboid, and volume of a tube, and the rest. So you must be able to grasp such formulas so that in case they bring any shape, you are at an advantage. So do that before you sit for your UNEB. Advice to teachers that the question is on application of volume in three-dimensional geometry, and many teachers teach it theoretically. So they advise that a practical approach is needed to make it easier. So you can make those models so that students can visualize what they are doing. Emphasis should be laid on unit conversion. So remember, all the entries must have the same units before you substitute in the formula for volume. So that was question 4. Now we shall go to question 5. So question 5 says, express 3 over 1 minus root 2 in the form a plus b root 2. So yeah, the first thing to do is to rationalize. So to rationalize, you have to look for the conjugate. Now the conjugate means you look at this sign. If this is minus, it means that the conjugate will have a plus here. And the reverse is true. If here it was plus, here it would be minus. So now that you have got the conjugate, the next thing to do is multiply the conjugate to both the numerator and denominator. So this numerator I'll multiply it by the conjugate, and this denominator I'll also multiply it by the conjugate to come up with this step. Now next is to expand by opening brackets. When I open brackets for the numerator, this by this will give me 3, and this by this will give me 3 root 2. But for the denominator, you realize that this is difference of 2 squares, meaning that it will be equal to this squared minus this squared. So next is to simplify the denominator still. So 1 squared is 1, and root 2 squared is 2. So that means that 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Therefore, multiplying the numerator by negative 1 each time in the numerator by negative 1. For example, 3 by negative 1 will give me negative 3. Then positive 3 root 2 divided by negative 1 will give me negative 3 root 2. That is why you see a minus here. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for rationalizing, M1 for opening brackets for numerator and denominator, so opening this bracket and also this M1 for this part, and A1 for splitting the numerator. So the question was on numerical concepts, and the question required candidates to rationalize the denominator. The question was popular but not well done. The weakness is that many candidates fail to form a correct conjugate and multiply through the numerator and denominator. So the conjugate was 1 plus root 2, and many candidates could not form it. Then another weakness that the use of integers was a problem to some candidates. So advise that teachers should do more about product of difference of 2 squares, and also formation of conjugates. So conjugate, students must learn conjugate, that you change the sign, and also difference of 2 squares must also be known before you do such questions which involve rationalizing. So more practice in use of integers should be given priority. So that was question 5. Now we shall go to question 6. Question 6 says, given that fx is equal to 3x plus 16 over 4, find the inverse of f1. So they want the inverse of f1. The first thing to do is to get the inverse of fx. Or that we shall substitute. Now to get the inverse of fx, what we shall do, you first let capital Y be equal to fx, and after that you shall replace this small x with capital X. So note that these are small letters, but after letting we use capital letters. You must remember that. So after letting that, the next thing to do, what we are looking for, is to make capital X the subject. So to make it the subject, we shall go step by step. First of all, we shall cross multiply, bring this one this side to come up with 4y is equal to 3x plus 16. After that, we shall take this one this side to come up with 4y minus 16 is equal to 3x. And after that, we shall divide both sides by 3 to come up with x being equal to 4y minus 16 over 3. So we have succeeded in making x a subject. Next is to state the inverse. So how do they state the inverse? So to state the inverse, you replace now capital X with the inverse of x of fx. Then capital Y is now replaced with small x. Hope you have understood that. So now this is our inverse of fx, and that is what we shall use to get this inverse of f1 by replacing x with 1. Therefore, f1 will be equal to, where there is x, we have put 1 to come up with 4 times 1 minus 16 over 3. When I simplify, I'll come up with this 4 times 1 is 4 minus 16 is negative 12. Here down is still 3. So negative 12 divided by 3, you'll come up with negative 4. That means that f1 is equal to negative 4. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for letting, another M1 for making capital X the subject, then M1 for substitution, and A1 for the output. So the question was about functions, and the question required the candidates to find the inverse function of fx and substitute for x correctly. This was a popular question and it was well performed. However, some candidates failed to transpose x in the equation. So you must be able to interchange, and after that you replace small x with capital letters, and also that means that letting must be done correctly, and also replacing must also be done correctly. That's what they mean by transpose. They failed to determine inverse of fx, and also others could not substitute 1 for x correctly. So substitution is also needed, correct substitution. So advice to teachers is that a lot of practice is needed in algebraic functions and inverse. So inverse is very vital, and you must do a lot of practice, you as a student who's about to sit for your UNEB. So that was question 6. Now we shall go to question 7. So question 7 says the coordinates of the midpoint of a line PQ are 8, negative 1. The coordinates of P are 5, negative 5. Determine the coordinates of Q. So they have somehow interchanged, because we have been used to being given 2 coordinates and they ask for the midpoint. Now they are giving you 1 point and also the midpoint. What does that mean? We shall come and say that let the coordinates of Q be x, y. So what does that mean? It means that the midpoint of the x coordinate will be this plus this over 2 to come up with this part. But they told us that the x coordinate of the midpoint is 8. That's why we equate it to 8. Therefore, next thing to do is make x the subject. To make x the subject, the first thing we are going to first cross multiply to come up with 5x equal to 16. Then after that we shall make x the subject, and x will be 11. So this is the x coordinate of Q. Next we shall go to the y coordinate. So y coordinate means that negative 5 plus y over 2 will be equal to negative 1. So we shall come and say negative 5 plus y over 2 is equal to negative 1. After that we shall cross multiply to come up with negative 5 plus y equal to negative 2, and after that we shall make y the subject and y will be equal to 3. Therefore the coordinate of 2 will be 3, 11, 3. So always remember to write in coordinate form because the question wanted coordinates. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for equating coordinates and its mobile, meaning this M1 can be given at that point or at this point. A1 for the x coordinate, A1 for the y coordinate, and B1 for stating the coordinates of 2. So that was this question was on coordinates geometry, and the question required the candidates to apply the concept of midpoint to find one of the two ends of the lines. The question was unpopular and many candidates failed it. So like I said, most students were used to get to being given two endpoints and they asked for the midpoint. But in this case they gave one endpoint and also a midpoint, and they wanted the other endpoint, so it was not popular. So the weakness is that stating and applying the formula for midpoint of a line to find the required point. So stating it was not easy. Most students were getting the average of the two given points, which was not okay. So the advice is that teachers should teach a variety of methods of finding midpoints. So that was question 7. Now we shall go to question 8. So question 8 says the water tanks are of the same shape. The larger tank is 80 centimeters high with a capacity of 500 liters. What is the capacity of the smaller tank whose height is 48 centimeters? So here what you should realize that they are of the same shape. So when they are of the same shape, what comes in our minds is similarity. Now for you to use similarity, the units for height must be the same. In this case they are the same, which is okay. And the units for capacity is the same as volume, must be the same. So in this case the volume was given in liters, meaning even the volume of the smaller tank will also be given in liters. So always remember that. Most students confuse it and they give the final answer 2 centimeters cubed, but the answer was needed must be given in liters. So after knowing that, we shall go and answer our question. So because they are similar, the first thing to do is to get the linear scale factor. Now linear scale factor is equal to height of the larger tank over height of the smaller tank. So the height of the larger tank was 80 and the height of the smaller tank was 48. So when I divide, I'll come up with 5 over 3. So when I use decimals, it will have many decimal places. That's why I leave it in fraction form. It is better to leave it in fraction form. All that we shall know that the relationship between linear scale factor and volume scale factor is that volume scale factor is equal to the cube of linear scale factor. So this was linear scale factor, so I'll come and cube it to come up with 22 or 125 over 27. So it's better to leave them in fraction form if it has decimals. So now that I've got volume scale factor, I'll go back and say that volume scale factor is equal to volume of larger tank over volume of smaller tank. So at this point you need consistency. What do I mean by consistency? If in a linear scale factor you began with larger tank, even in volume scale factor you must begin with larger tank and end with smaller tank. And the reverse is also true. If you begin with a smaller tank here, you also have to begin with a smaller tank here. So in this case, we began with a larger tank for LSF. That's why we begin with a larger tank here for also VSF. So consistency is needed. After that, we shall substitute and say that volume scale factor is given here. Then volume of the larger tank is that. Now volume of the smaller tank is what we want, so we shall let it to be V. Now from that step, the next thing to do to look for is to make V the subject, and the first thing to do to make V the subject is to cross multiply. So when I cross multiply, I come up with 125 times V is equal to 27 times 500. So when 27 times 500 will give me 13,500. So next is to divide both sides by V to come up to divide both sides by 125 to make V the subject. So when I do that, I'll come up with V equal to 108 liters. Note that I'm using units of liters because this volume was also given in liters. So if you use centimeters cube, that will not be okay. So I shall come here and conclude that the capacity of the smaller tank is 108 liters. So basically that's what they wanted, and now let's see how marks can be awarded. So B1 for getting linear scale factor, B1 for getting volume scale factor, M1 for substitution, and A1 for the required volume. So the question was about ratios. Candidates were required to determine the volume of a given tank from a given similar one. The question was unpopular and many candidates failed it. Unpopular means that it appears less frequently in the previous past papers. So the weakness is that many candidates failed to relate linear scale factor to volume scale factor. And advise that teachers should emphasize the teaching of similarity in geometry, linear scale factor, volume scale factor, and their relationships in mensuration. So that was question 8. Now we shall go to question 9. Question 9 says, Fauza bought 1 dozen of t-shirts at shillings 40,000 per shirt. She sold them at a profit of 20%. How much money did she earn as profit from the shirt sales? So we shall come and say that the total cost, remember they said he bought a dozen. Dozen means 12, but each shirt was costing 40,000. So to get the total cost price, we shall say 40,000 for each shirt multiplied by 12,000, which because it was a dozen. So we shall come up with shillings 480,000 as the cost price. Then the total profit will be 20% of the total cost price, which is 480,000. Therefore, 20% means 20 over 100. This word of means multiplication. Therefore, when I multiply, I come up with shillings 96,000. So basically, that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for this multiplication, B1 for the cost price, M1 for this substitution, A1 for the output. So the question was about business mathematics, and the question required the candidates to calculate profit from a dozen of shirts sold. The question was popular and well done. However, the weakness is that obtaining percentage profit was a weakness to many candidates, and also interpretation of the question was a weakness, and other candidates forgot to multiply by 12 to get the dozen. So advice to teachers is that teachers need to teach more about profit and loss. And another advice that the relationship of learned concepts should be taught in relation to real life situation in order to make it applicable. So profit and loss is taught in senior 2. What does that mean? It means that as you prepare for UNEB, you must also remember to revise lower secondary coverage, what you covered in senior 1 and senior 2. So that was question 9. Now we shall go to question 10. So question 10 says, in the figure below, OP is vector A and OQ is vector B. So this symbol means tilde, so OP is A tilde and OQ is B tilde. and PR is a third of P2. Express OR in terms of A tilde and B tilde. So the first thing to do is to get the root. So for me to move from O to R will be equal to from O to P and from P to R. Therefore, come and say that my OP is A tilde and PR, we are told that PR is a third of P2. So what is P2? So for you to get P2, to move from P to Q is equal to from P to O and then from O to Q. So if you realize that P to O is opposite of OP, meaning that it will be negative A tilde, that is why I'm putting here minus A tilde. Then O to Q is B tilde, that's why I'm putting here positive, because it's the same direction of O Q. So this B minus A is P2, and this third is coming from here. It was given in the question. So next is to get the LCM. So the LCM will be 3. So 3 divided by 1. So this is A tilde over 1. So 3 divided by 1 is 3 times that will give me 3 A tilde. Then 3 divided by 3 is 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. So that means that 1 multiplied by this bracket will still be the same as B minus A tildes. After that, next is to collect like terms. Realize that this 3A and minus A will give me 2A. So I'll come up with 2A here, and this B is the alone, so it will be B here. Now this 3 is the denominator, so it can come out to become 1 over 3. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So B1 for the root, correct root, M1 for substitution, and M1 for combining into one quotient, getting LCM, and A1 for the output. So the question was about vectors, and candidates were required to find OR in terms of A tilde and B tilde. The question was unpopular and very few candidates did it correctly. Unpopular means that it appears less frequently in the previous past papers. So the weakness of candidates is that candidates had problems in establishing the root of OR. Then also interpreting the ratios involving a third P2 correctly was also a weakness to many candidates. The advice to teachers is that correct roots for the vectors should be illustrated, and also applying the vector notation in vector problems should be emphasized. So vector notation is this tilde I've been talking about. So this tilde is very, very vital, and you must be consistent with it. So that was section A. Now we shall go to section B, which carries 60 marks. So section A carries 40 marks and has 10 questions, and section B carries 60 marks and has 7 questions, and the candidate is expected to answer only 5 questions. Now because this is a revision, we are going to answer all the 7 questions, but remember, in an exam you answer only 5. So we shall start with question 11. So question 11 part A says simplify, and they give you the whole of this expression to simplify. Then part B says a forest reserve covering an area of 807.5 kilometers squared is represented on a map by a green area of 32.3 centimeters squared. Determine the scale of the map. So we shall start with part A, where they want us to simplify this. So for you to simplify easily, we are going to first begin with the numerator alone. So what we are going to do, we are going to first deal with this numerator alone, and after that we shall deal with this denominator alone, and in the end we shall divide both numerator and denominator. So if we deal with the numerator alone, this is the numerator which was given, and you have to remember, as you do such questions, you have to be keen of BODMAS. So BODMAS, what we are going to first do is to make this mixed fraction into an improper fraction. So how is that done? We shall say 6 times 3 to give you 18, then 18 plus 5 to give you 23, which is here, and everything divided by 6, which is our divisor here. So that was that part. Then for this part, it will be 15 times 2 to come up with 30, and 30 plus 2 will give you 32, which is this, divided by this divisor, which is 15. The symbol is still maintained, which is division, and after that we shall copy the whole of this and put it here. So now next is to change this division to turn it into a multiplication sign. Now for you to do that, this one must also become a reciprocal. So what do I mean by reciprocal? So for reciprocal means what was the denominator becomes numerator, and what was the numerator becomes denominator. For example, this was 32 over 15, meaning that its reciprocal will now be 15 over 32. So it's only after that that you can put a multiplication sign here. Then this one is still remains untouched. We shall touch it later. Now that was this step. Now at this step we are going to do some reducing. So for example, this 23 and this 23 will cancel to give you 1 1. That's why you see this one here, it is coming from here, and also you see this one here, it is coming from here. Okay, then next is this 3 and this 2, this 6. So this 3 will give you 1 and this will give you 2. That is why you see this 2 here and you see this one here. So that is how this step came about. Now that means that 1 times 15 times 1 will give me 15. Then for the denominator, 2 times 32 times 1 will give me 64. So that was the numerator. Now we shall go to the denominator. So the first thing to do is to turn the mixed fraction into an improper fraction. So 3 times 5 is 15. 15 plus 1 is 16. That is why there is 16 here, and the divisor is 3. Then for this part, 12 times 2 is 24. 24 plus 7 is 31. That is why you see 31 here, and the divisor is 12. So next is to get LCM. LCM of 3 and 12 is 12. Therefore, 12 divided by 3 is 4. 4 times 16 is 64. That is why you see 64 here. Then 12 divided by 12 is 1. 1 times 31 is 31. That is why you see 31 here. And this minus is coming from there. So this minus is because of this. So next is to say 64 minus 31 to give you 33. This remains 12. Then next we shall divide. If I divide both numerator and denominator by 3, I realize that 33 divided by 3 is 11, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. So now I've got this as my numerator and this as my denominator. Therefore, what does that mean? It means that the given expression will be equal to numerator divided by denominator, and numerator is there and denominator is here. Now, like we did, this division sign can turn into multiplication sign only if this becomes a reciprocal. So here it was 11 over 4, this side it will now be 4 over 11. Now next is to do some reducing. This 4 and this 16, here to be 1 and here to be 16. sorry, this one 64, so here it will be 1 and here it will be 16. Now this 16, that is where this is coming from, and this one, that is why we put here 1. So in the end we have numerator 15 times 1 to give you 15. Denominator we have 16 times 11 to give you 176. So basically that's what they wanted in part A. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for simplifying the numerator. So this M1 for M1B1, so this one will be first of all to get the improper fractions, and B1 for simplifying. M1 to get the improper fractions and B1 for simplifying. Then M1 for substitution and A1 for output. So this was supposed to be P to mean this was supposed to be P to mean output. So that was part A. Now part B said a forest reserve covering an area of 108.5 kilometers squared is represented by on a map by a green area of 32.3 centimeters squared. Determine the scale of the map. So this is equivalent to that. So you come and see that for the map we have 32.3 centimeters squared, and on the ground it is 108.5 kilometers squared. So these two are equivalent, so this sign must be maintained. It is equivalent, not equal to. Now next is to get the units. So divide throughout by 32.3 both sides to come up with 1 centimeter squared is equivalent to 25 kilometers squared. So after that, remember we want the scale. Scale must be linear. So this was area, so area scale, so we must get a linear scale. So to get linear scale, you must put square root on both sides. When I put square root on both sides, here square root of 1 is 1, and square root of centimeter squared is centimeter. Here square root of 25 is this, and square root of kilometer squared is kilometer. So next we have simplified to come up with 1 centimeter is equivalent to 5 kilometer. Note that we are using the word equivalent. So after that we shall remember that 1 kilometer is equal to, now we are using equal to, we have been using equivalent, now we are using equal to, is equal to 100,000 centimeters. So what does that mean? We are going to convert this kilometer to centimeters. So just therefore come and say that once, and remember when you are converting from big to small, you multiply. That is why you multiply here by 100,000 to come up with 5 times 100,000 centimeters this side. But remember we are maintaining the equivalent sign. Then from there we shall say that 1 centimeter is equivalent to 500,000 centimeters. So now that all are in the same units, centimeter, we can come and conclude that the scale is 1 to 500,000. So this is the scale which was used. Therefore the scale of the map is 1 to 500,000. So that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for division and B1 for the output. M1 for the square root, B1 for output. M1 for multiplying and B1 for the required scale. So the question was about numerical concepts. Candidates were required to, in part A, they were required to simplify the given fraction using BODMAS or otherwise. And in part B, they were required to determine the scale of a map. So the question was popular but poorly done. Popular means that it appears frequently in the previous past papers. So the weakness of the candidates is that many candidates fail to simplify the expressions involving fractions. So you must go step by step for you to answer such a question. First deal with the numerator alone, and after that you divide. In part B, many fail to relate area scale factor to linear scale factor. So we must remember to put a square root to move from kilometer square to kilometer and from centimeter square to centimeter. Advice to teachers is that teachers should give more practice in the use of fractions and also relate area scale factor to linear scale factor. So that was question 11. Now we shall go to question 12. So question 12 says, in a survey carried out in the Department of Languages at a certain university, the following data was collected. 20 students spoke Germany, 10 spoke French and Germany, 9 spoke French and Kiswahili, 7 spoke Kiswahili and Germany only. Know this word, only. 2 could not speak any of the 3 languages. 22 could speak at least 2. Know that word, at least 2 of the languages. 12 could speak only 1 language. Only 1 language. 11 could either speak Kiswahili or Germany but not French. Know that word, Kiswahili or Germany but not French. So part A, use a Venn diagram to represent the given information, and part B, find the number of students that could speak Roman 1 all the 3 languages, and Roman 2 Kiswahili only, and Roman 3 French only. Then part C, what is the probability that a student picked at random from the group could speak neither Kiswahili nor Germany? So we shall start with part A, where they want us to represent the given information on a Venn diagram. So we shall first let the intersection of all to be X, those who speak all the 3 languages to be X. After that we shall draw our Venn diagram. Since there are 3 languages, we shall draw 3 circles to mean the 3 sets. Okay, so next is to feed in the given information. If you look at this, they told us in a survey carried out in the Department of Languages in a certain university. So 20 students spoke Germany. 20 spoke German. So we shall come here and put under Germany, we shall put 20, but the others are not given, so we shall put question marks. So we are not given the number of students who speak French, we are not given the number of students who speak Swahili, and also the total number of students is not given. So that's why we put question marks. Next here we show that those who speak all the 3 languages is X, so we shall come here and put X there. Okay, so when you go back, that was 20. Now let's go to the next. Next they said 10 spoke French and Germany. So French and Germany is the whole of this, and they told us that it is 10, but we already know that this is X, meaning that the remainder will be 10 minus X. So we shall come here and put 10 minus X. Okay, so that is 10. Now let's go to 9. 9 spoke French and Kiswahili. So French and Kiswahili, the 9 is the whole of this, but we already know that this is X, meaning that the remainder here will be 9 minus X. So you come here and put 9 minus X there. So that was 9. What about this 7? This 7 says 7 spoke Kiswahili and Germany only. Know this word only. What does that mean? So Kiswahili and Germany, the intersection is this, but they said only, meaning that this one is not included. What does that mean? It means that the 7 is only here. So you come and put our 7 there. After 7, they talked about this 2. So this 2 says 2 could not speak any of the 3 languages. Could not, meaning that they are outside these 3 languages. So you shall put it here. So you come and put this 2 there. Okay, so next, these are not given, so you shall put just letters A, B, and C. So now that you have filled at least every part in this Venn diagram, the next is to answer the questions that follow. So that means that this other information here of 22, 12, and 11 will be used to get the values of the unknowns and also to answer the questions. So the first part, B Roman 1, they wanted those who spoke all the 3 languages. So let's see how we can use that information to get those who spoke all the 3 languages, and we saw that those who spoke all the 3 languages is X, so we have to get X. So the first thing to do is to remember that this NG at least was given, meaning that when you add all these ones, you'll be able to get 20. So I'll come here and say that NG is equal to A plus this 10 minus X plus this X plus this 7 must be equal to that 20. So when you do that, you realize that this and this cancels, so that you come up with that. So this 10 plus this 7 gives you 17. Therefore A plus 17 is equal to 20, meaning that A is equal to 3. So I've got the value of this A. So next is use the information for those who spoke at least 2 of the languages. So remember, in the question we are given some information about those who spoke at least 2 of the languages. So when you look at this, 22 could speak at least 2 of the languages. So now at least means, at least 2 means 2 or more. Those who spoke 2 and those who spoke 3 are equal to 22. What does that mean? These spoke 2, this one spoke 2, and this spoke 2, but this spoke 3. So what does that mean? It means that when you add this to this to this to this, we shall be able to get 22. Therefore we shall come and add them. So this 10 minus X is there, this X is here, this 7 is here, 9 minus X is here, and gives you 22. So next is to simplify. This with this cancels, and 10 plus 7 plus 9 gives 26. This negative X comes here, this one remains that. So that means that X is equal to 4. Therefore the number who spoke all the 3 languages will be 4 students. So we have answered Roman 1. Before we go to the next slide, let's see how marks can be awarded for this slide. So B1 for this entry, another B1 for that entry, B1 for this entry, and B1 for the value of A. Then M1 for forming the equation, and A1 for the value of X. So that was Roman 1. Roman 2, they wanted Swahili only, and Roman 3, they wanted French only. Then, and lastly, part C, they wanted the probability that a student picked at random from a group could speak neither Swahili nor Germany. So let's see how those are done. So Kiswahili only is this value of C, and French only is the value of B. So in other words, they want you to get the value of B and the value of C. So those who speak either Kiswahili or French or Germany but not French, so we are told something about that information. If we go back to the question, they told us that 11 could either speak Kiswahili or Germany but not French. So where is that in our Venn diagram? So Kiswahili or Germany but not French means that we're going to add this to this to this. So A plus 7 plus C will be equal to the given number, which was 11. So you come here and say that those who speak either Kiswahili or Germany but not French will be equal to A plus 7 plus C and is equal to 11. Therefore, I'll come and substitute for A. Remember, A we already got it as 3. Therefore, I have only C as the only unknown. Therefore, C will be equal to 1. So if by getting C, it implies that I've got those who speak Kiswahili only. Now what I'm left with is those who speak French only. So I conclude that those who speak Kiswahili only is one student. So here, only one language. You're also given some information on those who speak only one language. So let's go back to the question and see that information. So they said 12 could speak only one language. So when you go to the Venn diagram, those who speak only one language are only one language. We have this and this and this. So we have A plus B plus C is equal to those who speak only one language. Therefore, we shall come here and say that A plus B plus C is equal to 12. But the good thing, I know A and I know C. Therefore, I come and substitute for A and C to remain with B as the only unknown. Therefore, when I make B the subject, B will be equal to 8. Therefore, I come and conclude that those who speak French only are 8 students. So now that we are done with Roman 2 and Roman 3, now we shall go to part C of the question. So part C, they said, what is the probability that a student picked at random from the group could speak neither Swahili nor French? Neither Swahili nor French means he doesn't speak Swahili, he doesn't speak French. So now that, because they have talked about probability, remember probability is equal to event over sample space. So the first thing to do is to get the total number of students. Remember here it was question mark, it was not given. So the first thing to do is to get the total number of students, and after that we shall say event over sample space. So what will be the event? The event is the number of students who speak neither Germany nor Swahili. So we shall first look for those who speak Germany and cross them out. Then those who speak Kiswahili and also cross them out. So the remaining ones will be B and 2. Therefore, those who speak neither Swahili nor Germany is equal to B plus 2. That is the event. But then the sample space will be this total number of students. So how do they get the total number of students? So to get the total number of students, we know that the whole of this is equal to 20. So we shall say 20 plus 2 plus 9 minus x plus C plus B. That will be the total, which is this. So we're going to first get the total, then we can get the probability. So let's do that. here we shall say that the universal or total will be equal to 20 plus 2 plus 9 minus x plus b plus c. So when I add 2 plus 20 plus 2 is 22, 22 plus 9 is 31, so I come and say that the whole of that is 31. Then x was 4, we got it as 4, b we got it as 8, it is here, then c we got it as 1 and it is there. So this minus this plus this will give me 36. So this is the total number of students. Therefore the probability, so this is supposed to be probability, so probability of neither k nor g is equal to b plus 2 over 36. But remember b is 8, so 8 plus 2 over 36. Therefore I'll come up with a probability of 10 over 36. I can choose to reduce or I can choose to leave it as that. So if I choose to reduce, it will become 5 over 18. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for substitution and A1 for the value of C. M1 for substitution, A1 for the value of B. M1 for numerator and A1 for required probability. So the question was about sets and logic. The question required the candidates to represent the information in a Venn diagram, analyze it and find the probability. The question was very popular but not well done. Weaknesses of candidates: that candidates failed to interpret the question. The language was too logical. As we have seen while doing the solution, I think we realized that the language was very logical. Then many candidates failed that NK only and F only. They failed to realize the K only and F only. Then advice to teachers: that teachers should teach complement sets, intersection sets, and unions involving 3 intersecting sets. So that was question 12. Now we shall go to question 13. Question 13 says, a cyclist covered a journey of 48 kilometers from station A to station B in 5.5 hours. The cyclist rode at 12 kilometers per hour for the first 2.5 hours and changed the speed for the remaining part of the journey. Part A, Roman 1, determine the speed of the cyclist for the remaining part of the journey. And Roman 2, represent the cyclist's journey on a distance time graph. And part B, calculate the average speed of the cyclist from station A to station B. So just start with Roman 1. So for the first part of the journey, we know that distance moved is equal to speed times time. So speed was 12 kilometers per hour and time was 2.5 hours, which is 2.5. So when I multiply these two, I'll come up with 30 kilometers. For the remaining part of the journey, the time taken will be, remember, he has already taken 2.5 hours out of the 5.5. So when I subtract, I'll come up with 3 hours to be used for the remaining part. And also when it comes to distance, he has already covered 30 kilometers out of the 48. So when I say 48 minus 30, I'll come up with 18 kilometers, which is the remaining distance. Therefore, speed is equal to distance over time. Therefore, speed used for the next part of the journey will be distance, which is 18, over time, which is 3, to come up with 6 kilometers per hour. So before we go to the next slide, let's see how marks can be awarded for this slide. So M1 for substitution, B1 for the output, B1 for the time, B1 for the distance, M1 for substitution, A1 for output. So that was a Roman 1. Roman 2, they said represent the cyclist's journey on a distance time graph. So that means we need a graph paper. So that is our graph paper. Then next we have to draw axes and label them. So horizontal axis and vertical axis. Then you have to demarcate and also feed in the values. So we shall start with the horizontal axis, which is the time, and label it. Then also vertical axis, demarcate and also label, feed in the values, and then label it as distance in kilometers per hour. Now on this graph we are going to show the two parts of the journey. So for the first part, he moved a distance of 30 kilometers and the time was 2.5. So shall come here and look for 2.5, which is the time, and take it up, and also look for 30 kilometers, take it up, because remember it was 30 kilometers and 2.5 hours. So then you shall get that point. Now what we are going to do, we are going to join from the starting point to this point with a straight line using a ruler. So let's do that. So that will be the first part of the journey. What about for the second part? For the second part, he moved a distance of 18 kilometers and time of 3 hours. That means that the time now total 2.5 plus 3 will be 5.5. So we shall come here at 5.5 hours and take our vertical line upwards. Then 30 plus 18 will be 48. So we shall come and look for 48 here and take a horizontal line there. Then we shall get this point. Now what you're going to do, we are going to join this point to this point to get the second part of the journey, but it has to be done using a ruler. So let's do that. So that is the second part of the journey. So you have managed to represent what was given in a graph. So if you go back to the question, represent the cyclist journey on a distance time graph, that is done. Now we shall go to part B. Calculate the average speed of the cyclist from station A to station B. So average speed is the same as total distance over total time. So total distance will be 30 plus this, which is 18, and total time will be this 3 plus this, which will be 5.5. So we shall come here and say that average speed is equal to total distance over total time. Therefore total distance is 48, total time is 5.5. When you divide, we come up with 8.73 kilometers per hour. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So B1 for the axis well labeled, M1 for the uniform scale on both axes, and B1 for the first journey, another B1 for the second journey, M1 for this division, A1 for output. So the question was about kinematics. It required the candidates to interpret the question, draw the graph representing the journey, and calculate speed. The question was not popular and was poorly done. Not popular means that it appears less frequently in the previous past papers. So the weakness of candidates is that many candidates had problems in using an appropriate scale, and also plotting and drawing the graph, and also determining the speed for the rest of the journey. So advice to teachers, that teachers should encourage the use of graph books and do enough practice in graph work. Also, students should be guided in reading and translating the information in the question to the graph. So that was question 13. Now we shall go to question 14. Question 14 part A says, given the set of this set, draw a parallelogram to show the relation is the smallest prime factor of. That is part A. Part B, for the mapping of x to x for x plus 5, find the domain when the range is 1, 1, 3. And part C, the function fx equal to 2x squared and gx equal to 5x minus 3, find the value of x such that fx is equal to gx. So let's start with part A. So a parallelogram, we have to first draw a circle, then feed in the values. Then the relationship was that is a factor of. So we shall come and say 2 is a factor of 4, and also 2 is a factor of 6. So that's what they wanted in part A. Now we shall go to part B. So part B says, for the mapping x to 4x plus 5, find the domain when the range is 1, 1, 3. So that is what we have. So for 1, 1, 3, so we shall begin with 1. So 1, we shall equate this to 1, then you come make x the subject. So take this one this side, you come up with negative 4, divide both sides by 4 to come up with x equal to negative 1. So we are given 1, 1, 3. So next is, we have got for 1, now we shall get for 3. So for 3 we shall equate to 3. Equate this to 3, then take this one this side to come up with negative 2, divide both sides by 4 to come up with negative a half. So what does that mean? It means that now our domain is negative 1, negative 1, negative 0.5. So before we go to the next slide, let's see how marks can be awarded for this slide. So B1 for all the entries enclosed in a circle, then B1 for correct direction of arrow between 2 and 4, and another B1 for correct direction for the arrow between 2 and 6. Then here M1 for substitution. Here, remember, it is mobile, meaning it can be given at that step or at this step. Then B1 for the first value of x, then B1 for the second value of x, B1 for the domain. So that was part A. And part B. Part C say that say that the function fx is equal to that and gx is that. Find the value of x, say that fx is equal to gx. So fx is equal to gx, fx is that, and gx is that. So next is to put everything on one side, and we realize that this is a quadratic. So we have to first factorize by getting the factors whose sum is negative 5 and product is 6, and those factors are negative 2 and negative 3. That means that now we shall come up with, replace this one with the whole of this, negative 2 and negative 3. After that we shall group this alone and this alone. So for this alone, the common factor is 2x, that's why you put it outside. Then when you put this 2x outside, we shall remain with x, because 2x squared divided by 2x, you get x alone. Then here 2x divided by 2x, we get 1, so this minus is still there, and that 1 is put there. Then for this part, negative 3 is common, so negative 3x divided by negative 3, you come up with positive x, which is here. Then positive 3 divided by negative 3, you come up with negative 1, which is there. So I think we realize that now in these two parts, this and this are common, so we shall factorize them out and come up with 2x minus 3, which is that, multiplied by x minus 1, which is that. That means that either 2x minus 3 is equal to 0 or x minus 1 is equal to 0. In the end, so when I make x the subject here, x will be equal to 3 over 2, here x will be equal to 1. Now for integral values, x cannot be a fraction, so we shall remove this and remain with x equal to 1. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for equating, M1 for quadratic equation, M1 for factorizing, A1 for the values of x, and B1 for the required value. So this covered the topic of functions, relations, and mapping. Candidates were expected to draw a parallelogram, range and domain arrow diagram, and solve the quadratic equations in functions. The question was averagely attempted but not well done. So the weakness of candidates is that many candidates experience problems in drawing parallelogram or self-mapping, and also calculating the domain from a given range, and also forming and solving quadratic equation. Advice to teachers is that teachers should do much more on functions, relations, and mappings. Then parallelograms should also be given due attention. So that was question 14. Now we shall go to question 15. So question 15 part A says, given vector A is equal to negative 2, 4, vector B is equal to negative 5, 1, and vector C is equal to negative 1, 3, and 2a tilde plus m tilde plus b tilde is equal to c tilde. Find m tilde or vector m, then Roman 2 magnitude of vector m. Then part B, using vectors, show that the points P, which is that, Q, which is that, and R, which is that, lie on a straight line. So we shall first start with part A. So Roman 1, this is what is given, the relation which is given, and we are given the value, the vector A, vector B, and vector C, so we are going to substitute. So A is that, B is that, and C is that. So with this, I think you realize that we have only one unknown, which is vector M. So scalar multiplication, this with each entry inside here, we shall come up with negative 4, 8. Then addition, this with this vector, so negative 4 plus negative 5 is negative 9, 8 plus 1 is positive 9. The next is to take this one this side to come up with this, and when I subtract, I'll come up with m, vector m being equal to 8, negative 6. That was Roman 1. Now Roman 2, they wanted the magnitude, so magnitude will be 8 squared plus negative 6 squared, everything under root, to come up with square root of 64. So this is 64, this is 36, which gives a square root of 100, and that is 8, and that is 10 units. So that was Roman 1, part A, Roman 1 and Roman 2. Now let's see how much can be awarded before we go to the next slide. So this M1 for substitution and this one for scalar multiplication to get this value, and this one is for addition to get that value, and this one is for subtraction to get the required vector. M1 for substitution, A1 for the required magnitude. Now part B, they said show that points P, Q and R lie on a straight line. In other words, they want you to show that they are collinear. So for you to show that they're collinear, we're going to first get PQ. PQ is equal to OQ minus OP. So OQ is that, OP is that. So when I subtract, I'll come up with 4-1. Then PR is equal to OR minus OP. So OR is this, OP is that. So when I subtract, I'll come up with that. And when you realize these two values have something common, they have 3 is a common factor. So when I pull 3 outside, these 3 come outside, means that this 12 divided by 3 is 4, which is there, and this 3 divided by 3 is 1, which is there. And after that, you will realize that this one is the same as this. So what does that mean? It means that PR is equal to 3PQ. Therefore, we shall come and conclude that since PR can be expressed as a scalar multiple of PQ, and point P is common to both lines PR and PQ, then points PQ and R lie on a straight line. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So this M1 for subtraction, B1 for the output, M1 for subtraction, B1 for the output, and another B1 for factorizing out 3. Then B1 for the relationship between PR and PQ, and B1 for the conclusion. So both conditions must be stated. The condition for scalar multiple and the condition for common point. So the question was about vectors. Candidates were required to add vectors and find magnitude. It also required proof of collinearity of points using vectors. The question was not very popular and was poorly done. So the weakness of candidates is that many candidates displayed problems in vector multiplication by scalar, especially this one. So realizing that this 2 multiplies up and down, each entry was a challenge. Then also use of integers, negatives and positives. Then also finding modulus of a vector, that is magnitude of a vector, was also a challenge, and proving collinearity by proof of parallel vectors and common point was also a challenge. Now the advice to teachers is that teachers should teach addition and subtraction of vectors. They should teach proof of collinearity by showing that for any 2 parallel vectors with a common point, that 2 vectors have collinear points. So that was question 15. Now we shall go to question 16. Question 16 says that the table below shows fares of some flights at an airport. So these are the fares, destinations. These are fares for one-way ticket, fares for the return tickets. So here they specify that one-way ticket means from airport to destination, and return ticket means from airport to destination and back to airport. So part A, calculate the amount in Uganda shillings for a one-way ticket to B if the exchange rate is $1 to Uganda shillings 2,500. So 1 US dollar is equivalent to what, 2,500 shillings of Uganda. Then part B, a family bought 4 return tickets for destination A at shillings 5,737,000 shillings, Uganda shillings. Determine the exchange rate. So part C, a tourist bought a one-way ticket to sea at a rate of $1 to Uganda shillings 2,400. Another tourist bought a one-way ticket to sea at a rate of $1 to Uganda shillings 2,420 a week later. How much more Uganda shillings did the second tourist pay? So yeah, start with part A. So you know that the rate is $1 is equivalent to Uganda shillings 2,500. Therefore, $705. Now, where are the $705 coming from? It comes from the given table, which is here, one-way ticket of destination B. So $705 will be equal to 2,500 times 705, and that gives you 1,762,500 Uganda shillings. So now we shall go to part B. So part B says that a family bought 4 return tickets for destination A at Uganda shillings 5,737,000. Determine the exchange rate. So 4 return tickets for destination A. Now shall come here to our table. Return tickets for destination A, each is $565. So amount for each return ticket will be 5 million. The total, which was 5,737,000, divided by 4 to come up with the amount for each ticket, which is 1,434,250. Therefore, for destination A, we know that US dollar 565 is equal to this amount which he paid for return ticket of destination A. Now, when I divide both sides by 565, I'll come up with $1 is equal to Ugandan shillings 2,538.5 shillings. So that was the exchange rate for that destination. Therefore, before we go to the next slide, let's see how much can be awarded for this slide. So M1 for this multiplication, A1 for the output, M1 for this division, B1 for this output, B1 for stating the correct rates from table, M1 for division, and A1 for output. So that was part B. Now part C says a tourist bought a one-way ticket to sea at a rate of $1 to Uganda shillings 2,400. Another tourist bought a one-way ticket to sea at a rate of $1 to Uganda shillings 2,420 a week later. How much more in Uganda shillings did the second tourist pay? So there are 2 exchange rates. One is 2,400, another one is 2,420. So let's see. So for the first tourist, this is the rate which was used. Therefore, 380 US dollars will be equal to 2,400, which is the rate, times 380. Now, where is this 380 coming from? So 380 is coming from here, one-way ticket of destination C. So this is equivalent to that. Then for the second tourist, the rate changed and the rate was 2,420. Therefore, 380 will be equal to this times that. Therefore, the extra amount paid will be equal to the difference between these two, which is that minus that. and that gives you Ugandan shillings of 7,600 as the extra amount paid. So that was part C. Let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for this multiplication, B1 for this output, B1 for this, M1 for subtraction, and A1 for the output. So the question involved business mathematics. Candidates were required to handle exchange rates in US dollars and Uganda shillings. The question was popular and well done. So weakness of candidates is that some candidates had problems in part B, determining the exchange rate from amount given in Uganda shillings with its equivalent US dollar. Advice suggests that teachers should practice currency and exchange through regular use of daily newspapers to expose students to currency exchange rates. So that was question 16. Now let's go to question 17. So question 17 says that the diagram below shows a tube KLMNWXYZ, in which KL is 9 centimeters, which is that, LM is 6 centimeters, which is that, and MY is 5 centimeters, which is that. Calculate part A, calculate the length of Roman 1 km and Roman 2 ky. Then part B, determine the angle between Roman 1 line ky and the base KLMN, and Roman 2 plane KZYL and plane WXYZ. So for Roman 1, if you have to draw right angle triangle, so this question of three-dimensional geometry is easily done by you first isolating out the right angled triangle. So I'm going to isolate right angle triangle KLM, and in that case we have this KM as the hypotenuse, therefore KM squared is equal to KL squared plus LM squared. When I substitute, I'll come up with that. So KL is 9, KLM is 6. That means that KM squared is equal to 81. So 9 squared is 81, 6 squared is 36. And KM squared, when I add these two, I'll come up with 117. Put square from both sides, I'll come up with KM being equal to 10.82. So here in Olevel we use two decimal places. So that was Roman 1 km. Now they want ky. So for ky, still we extract out a right angle triangle KMY. Therefore we already saw KM as square root of that, and we know YM is 5 centimeters. Therefore we need ky, which is the hypotenuse. Therefore we shall still come and use Pythagoras theorem. Ky squared is equal to km squared plus my squared. So when I substitute for km squared is equal to that, because km squared here, it was the whole of this km squared is 117. That's why here there is no square on 117. But my is just 5, so my squared will be 5 squared. Therefore this gives me that. Therefore ky squared is 142, and when I put square from both sides, I'll come up with ky being equal to 11.92 centimeters. So Olevel will use two decimal places. So basically that's what they wanted in part A. Now let's see how marks can be awarded. So M1 for substitution Pythagoras theorem, another M1 for square root, and A1 for the output. M1 for substitution, M1 for square root, and A1 for output. So now we shall go to part B, Roman 1. So for B Roman 1, they said determine the angle between Roman 1 line KY and the base KLMN. So base KLMN and line KY. So let's first illustrate that. So that is the base and that is the line. So the triangle we are going to extract out is triangle KMY, and this triangle is right angled at M. So let's come here and draw that triangle. So that is triangle KMY, and we have that and that. So this is the angle which they want. So you are coming and say that this is, with this angle, this is opposite, this is adjacent. So we shall use tan theta 1 equal to 5 over 10.82. Therefore theta 1 will be equal to 24.80 degrees, so 2 decimal places. That was Roman 1. Now we shall go to Roman 2. So for Roman 2, let's first remove the one that determine the angle between the plane KZYL and plane WXYZ. So let's first remove this. Now they said KZYL, KZYL and WXYZ. So let's first shade those two planes. So that is KZYL, I think we can see it is slanting, and also plane WXYZ, that will be plane WXYZ. So I think realize that the angle which is required is this angle from here up to here. Therefore that means that we're going to extract a triangle XYL, and this triangle will be right angled at X. So we come and draw our triangle. So that is our triangle. So with this angle here, this is opposite, this is adjacent, so we shall use tan theta 2 is equal to 5 over 6, gives me theta 2 as 39.81 degrees. So basically that's what they wanted. Now let's see how much can be awarded. So M1 for identifying the angle, another M1 for correct ratio. So here I remember I can use tan, sine, or cos. So you have to know, if I use sine it will be opposite over hypotenuse, if I use cos it will be adjacent over hypotenuse, but now I've chosen to use tan, which will be opposite over adjacent. Then A1 for the output, M1 for identifying the angle, M1 for correct ratio, and A1 for the output. So the question was about three-dimensional geometry, and candidates were required to determine the size of angles and length of lines in a cuboid. The question was very popular and well done. However, some candidates had problems in determining the length of lines and the size of angles between planes, lines, and other planes. Advise that teachers should teach more of three-dimensional geometry using models so that the topic is practically understood. So that was UNEB 2017 of paper 2. So a brief summary is that the paper comprised two sections, A and B, and section A has 10 questions comparatively short answer questions, and section B has 7 extended answer questions, and a candidate answers only 5 questions. So the questions are drawn from the topics. So these are the topics from which a paper of Math 2 is set from. So as you're preparing for Math paper 2, always remember that these are the topics you are to expect in your paper. That is numerical concepts, set theories, functions, graphs, vectors, three-dimensional geometry, and lastly business mathematics. So that brings us the end of this video. Thank you for watching, and be reminded that the next video will be for UNEB 2016 of Math Paper 1. So if you have not yet subscribed, please click on the subscribe button below this video so that you can receive updates when the next video for UNEB 2016 of Math 1 has been uploaded. And also, if you know of any student who's not yet on this platform, please share the link of this video with them via social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp so that we can all benefit as a family.